The arraignment lasted less than 20 minutes. Aiden stood in the back of the courtroom, hands folded in front of him, expression neutral. He wore a simple dark jacket over a gray shirt, nothing that suggested who he had once been or what he knew how to do. Evan Riker sat at the defense table, suit fitted tight across his shoulders, jaw set, eyes occasionally drifting toward the cameras outside the hallway. Sponsors still believed in him. Fans still posted messages about loyalty and discipline. The charge read like an inconvenience. Aggravated assault reduced to misdemeanor battery pending review. Probation recommended. Mandatory anger management. No jail time. Aiden did not blink. Tara avoided his eyes the entire hearing. When the judge asked if there were witnesses, she shook her head. The security footage from the house had malfunctioned. A coincidence, apparently. The prosecutor spoke carefully. The defense spoke confidently. The judge spoke efficiently. The system moved exactly as Aiden expected. Outside the courthouse, microphones waited. Evan smiled when asked for comment. It was self-defense, he repeated. Kid got aggressive. Aiden watched the clip on his phone later that afternoon while sitting beside his son's hospital bed. The wires across the boy's mouth made speech impossible. Pain medication dulled everything but humiliation. He turned the screen away before his son could see it. Aiden leaned forward. "Listen to me," he said quietly. "None of this is your fault." His son nodded once, eyes heavy but alert. The discharge papers came 2 days later. 12 weeks wired shut, liquid diet, follow-up scans, nerve checks. No contact order that extended exactly far enough to protect public optics and nothing more. At home, the silence felt different. The house was smaller now, the walls closer, every sound sharper. Aiden helped blend meals, timed medications, sat through long stretches of television neither of them watched. His son typed questions on a notepad. Will he get away with it? Aiden considered the wording. For now, he answered. He didn't lie. He didn't promise. That night, after his son finally slept, Aiden drove to a gym across town. Evan Riker's name glowed in white letters across the front window. Inside, the air smelled of sweat and rubber mats. Posters of past fights covered the walls. Undefeated, streaks, title eliminators, headlines about discipline and dominance. Aiden didn't step in. He watched through the glass. Evan moved with power, fast hands, sharp hips, efficient combinations. He was good. That was the problem. Talent attracted protection. Aiden left without being seen. Over the next week, he built a file. Training schedules, sparring partners, conditioning routines, injuries from previous fights, medical history buried in interviews and press conferences. Every fighter had weak points. Not dramatic ones, structural ones. The key was knowing which would collapse under pressure. A former contact returned his call on the third attempt. "You're retired," the voice said. "I am," Aiden replied. "So this isn't professional?" "No." Silence. "Then, what do you need?" "Fight footage from 5 years back," Aiden said. Unedited. It arrived by morning. He watched every round, frame by frame. Evan favored his right side when fatigued. His left elbow carried an old ligament repair. His shoulder rolled slightly before he overextended on a hook. Patterns. Patterns were weaknesses. Meanwhile, the media cycle shifted. Interviews framed the incident as domestic tension, youthful aggression, misunderstanding. Sponsors stayed. Evan announced a title eliminator scheduled in 3 months. 3 months. Aiden looked at the calendar on his kitchen wall. 12 weeks for a wired jaw. The symmetry didn't escape him. One evening, Tara called. "You need to let this go," she said. "It's over." Aiden listened to the hum in her voice. The anxiety she didn't mask well. "It's not over," he replied calmly. "It's paused. You're scaring me." "That's new," he said. She hung up. At the academy, Aiden resumed teaching as if nothing had changed. Kids practiced stance. Adults worked through drills. He corrected posture, adjusted grips. Control wasn't about force. It was about timing. One of his older students asked quietly after class, "You okay?" Aiden met his eyes. "I'm focused." That night, he opened the old notebook again. He didn't rush. He didn't fantasize. He calculated. There were ways to end a fighting career without ending a life. Ways to dismantle something carefully, built with the same precision it took to build it. And the most effective move was rarely made in anger. It was made in silence. Across town, an undefeated fighter posted training footage to millions of followers. Across the kitchen table, a 16-year-old boy tried to sip broth through clenched wires. Aiden Cross closed the notebook. The law had drawn its line. Now he would draw his. And when the moment came, it wouldn't look like revenge. It would look like inevitability. The call came while he was cleaning blood off the mat. Not his. Aiden Cross ran a small self-defense academy on the edge of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Nothing flashy, just discipline, sweat, and repetition. The kind of place parents trusted when they wanted their kids to stand straighter and speak softer. His phone buzzed against the metal bench. Unknown number. Hospitals always called from unknown numbers. He answered on the second ring. "Is this Aiden Cross?" The voice was clinical, calm, detached. "Yes. Your son has been admitted to St. Francis. Facial trauma. You should come immediately." The world didn't tilt. It narrowed. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you are watching from. It helps more than you know. "What happened?" Aiden asked. "There was an altercation," the nurse replied. "His jaw is fractured. In multiple places. Multiple." Aiden hung up before his body decided how to feel. He drove without speeding. That was the discipline. Red lights obeyed. Turns signaled. His breathing steady, shoulders relaxed. He had spent most of his adult life learning how to stay calm when calm was the last thing anyone else could manage. The emergency room smelled like antiseptic and fear. He found his son in a curtained bay, head wrapped, lower face swollen beyond recognition. A metal brace held his jaw in alignment. Tubes fed liquid nutrients through a small opening near the molars. 16 years old, eyes open, embarrassed. Aiden pulled a chair close and sat. "Who?" he asked quietly. His son blinked once, looked toward the wall. A woman stood near the doorway, late 30s, arms crossed, expression tight. His ex-wife, Tara Cole. Behind her stood a man built like a statue carved from anger. Tattoos. Broad shoulders, hands taped, even now as if he had come from training and hadn't bothered to remove the evidence. Evan Riker, undefeated in his last 8 professional MMA fights. Aiden didn't look at him long. "What happened?" Aiden repeated. Tara answered first. "It was an accident. They were arguing. It escalated." Aiden's gaze stayed on his son. "Tell me." His son swallowed, winced, and typed into his phone with shaking fingers. "He kicked me." Aiden read it twice. Steel-toed boot. The swelling made sense now. The wiring. The surgery scheduled for the next morning. A police officer stepped in to take statements. He looked tired, uninterested. "It's being investigated," the officer said. "There are conflicting accounts." Evan Riker finally spoke. "Kid swung first," he said. Self-defense. His voice carried confidence. The kind born from cameras, sponsorships, and men who cheered when he broke other men's bones for sport. Aiden stood slowly. He did not raise his voice. "You're a professional fighter," he said. "And you kicked a teenager in the face." Evan shrugged. "Shouldn't have stepped up." Tara flinched. Aiden looked at her then. Really looked. "You saw it," he said. She didn't answer. Silence told him enough. The surgeon explained the damage later in a quiet room. 4 fractures. Plates required. 12 weeks. Wired shut. Possible nerve complications. Aiden thanked him. Outside the hospital, night pressed in heavy and close. He stood beside his truck and let the old calculations begin. He had buried that life years ago. The operation, the shadows, the kind of work that never made. Headlines and never asked for credit. Former black ops. Invisible when necessary. Precise when required. The legal system would take statements, review footage, weigh testimony. But men like Evan Riker rarely lost much in court, not when careers and money stood behind them. Aiden drove home alone. In his office, he pulled a worn notebook from the bottom drawer. He hadn't opened it in years. Inside were diagrams, pressure points, recovery timelines, injury thresholds that ended careers without ending lives. He closed it. Not yet. First he would wait. He would observe. He would let the system show him exactly how far it intended to fall short, because if it did, he already knew how to fill the gap. And somewhere across town, an undefeated fighter slept peacefully, unaware that the only man he should have feared had just started paying attention. The fight was announced on a Tuesday morning. Evan Riker versus a ranked contender out of Las Vegas. Title eliminator. 3 months away. The promotion ran highlight reels on every sports channel that would carry them. Slow-motion knockouts. Explosive finishes. Commentators praising discipline and dominance. Aiden muted the television. 3 months. 12 weeks. His son sat at the kitchen table with a notebook open, writing answers for school assignments. He couldn't speak aloud. The swelling had gone down, but the wires remained. His eyes had changed, though they were sharper now. Less naive. He's still fighting, his son wrote, sliding the notebook across the table. For now, Aiden replied. The academy ran normally. Students drilled combinations. Teenagers worked through grappling positions. Parents waited near the entrance, scrolling through their phones. Aiden corrected foot placement, adjusted breathing pattern, reminded everyone that balance mattered more than strength. Balance. That word followed him home. He spent evenings reviewing fight footage frame by frame. He didn't look for flashy mistakes. He looked for fatigue markers, shoulder dips, guard drops, the subtle compensation that followed old injuries. Evan's left elbow was the key. A reconstruction surgery from a collegiate wrestling injury years earlier, mentioned once in a long, forgotten interview. Healed well, but never fully symmetrical. In the right conditions, under the right torque, it would fail again. Aiden made no calls for violence. He made calls for information. A former medic confirmed what Aiden suspected. Scar tissue along the ligament. Limited lateral stability. Under rotational stress. Why are you asking? The medic said. Curiosity, Aiden answered. At the courthouse, the final order was issued. Probation confirmed. No admission of guilt. Protective. Order extended, but narrowly defined. Evan left smiling. Sponsors held a press conference that afternoon. Aiden watched from the back of the gym. Public image mattered. Reputation mattered. Careers depended on both. Breaking a jaw healed. Breaking confidence did not. 2 weeks later, Aiden walked into the same gym he had watched from outside before. No confrontation. No threats. He signed up for a visitor pass and waited near the mat where sparring sessions rotated. Evan didn't recognize him at first. Aiden wore plain clothes, dark jacket, neutral expression. When their eyes met, recognition flickered. You lost? Evan asked casually. Aiden shook his head. Just watching. Evan laughed and turned back to his training partner. Aiden observed footwork, timing, recovery between rounds. He saw it clearly now. The shoulder roll before the hook. The weight shift, the moment of overextension. It would take less than 2 seconds. Aiden left without saying more. At home, his son typed another question. Are you going to fight him? Aiden paused. No, he said. I'm going to end it. His son stared at him for a long moment, then nodded once. The title eliminator approached quickly. Media tours, press events, open workouts. The narrative solidified. Redemption, discipline, unstoppable momentum. On the night of the weigh-in, Aiden stood in the crowd. He didn't chant, didn't cheer. He watched Evan step on the scale, flex, smile for cameras. Unaware, after the crowd dispersed, the parking garage emptied slowly. Evan walked toward his truck alone, headphones in, shoulders relaxed. Aiden stepped from the shadows. 2 seconds, he said calmly. Evan removed one headphone. What? Aiden moved. No wild swings, no shouting. He stepped inside the reach, pivoted, trapped the wrist, rotated under the elbow, and applied pressure, precisely where scar tissue failed under torsion. The ligament gave with a sound only someone trained to hear would recognize. Before Evan could process it, Aiden shifted position, mirrored the movement on the opposite arm. Compensatory strain forced into imbalance. The second joint collapsed under torque. Evan dropped to one knee, breath punched from his lungs. Aiden crouched beside him. You should have walked away, he said quietly. Then he stood and walked toward the exit. Cameras in the garage were angled toward the ramp, not the pillars. No witnesses stepped forward. Ambulances arrived within minutes. The injury report the next day read like a career obituary. Bilateral elbow dislocations. Severe ligament damage. Surgical reconstruction required. Indefinite. Suspension. At home, Aiden turned off the news. His son read the headline on his phone and looked up. "It's over?" he wrote. Aiden met his eyes. For him, he said. But as the headlines spread and sponsors retreated, another shift began. One that had less to do with elbows and more to do with reputation. And that was a wound far harder to repair. The footage from the parking garage circulated before noon. Blurry, shaky, inconclusive. Two figures near a pillar. A brief struggle. Then the undefeated contender dropping to one knee like someone had cut his strings. Sports analysts speculated. Overtraining. Pre-existing injury. Street altercation. No clear attacker. No charges filed. Evan Riker's management team called it an unfortunate incident. Sponsors suspended contracts. Pending investigation. The title eliminator vanished from the schedule within hours. Aiden watched none of it live. He was at the kitchen table helping his son practice speaking exercises the surgeon had recommended. Once the wires were adjusted. Slow syllables. Careful movements. Pain measured but endured. Strength returned in quiet increments. Meanwhile, the narrative outside shifted. Reporters dug. Not about the parking garage at first. About the original assault. Questions resurfaced. Why had security footage failed? Why had charges been reduced so quickly? Why had the victim's statement been limited? Aiden hadn't leaked anything. He didn't need to. Once a fighter's aura cracked, everything beneath it became visible. Evan's gym released a statement about privacy. His coach avoided interviews. Training partners stopped posting photos. The undefeated streak no longer defined him. The assault did. Aiden resumed full classes at the academy. Parents whispered at first. Then they stopped. They knew, better than to ask questions they didn't want answered. One evening, Tara appeared at the entrance. She looked smaller than before. "You did this," she said quietly. Aiden didn't deny it. He didn't confirm it either. "He'll never fight again," she continued. "He'll walk," Aiden replied calmly. "That's more than my son got." Her voice trembled. "You could go to prison." Aiden met her gaze evenly. "If I had wanted prison," he said, "it wouldn't look like this." She didn't respond. The probation officer assigned to the original case called a week later. New evidence had emerged. Public pressure mounted. The district attorney reopened the file under aggravated assault review. Witnesses who had stayed quiet reconsidered their statements. Silence loses value when the spotlight turned. Evan's reputation deteriorated faster than his joints could heal. Sponsors withdrew permanently. The promotion voided his contract, citing conduct detrimental to the sport. Aiden felt no triumph, only balance restoring itself. At home, his son's wires came off 3 weeks early after scans showed stable alignment. Speech returned slowly, uneven at first, then clearer. One night, they sat on the back porch in the cooling Oklahoma air. "You didn't have to do that," his son said softly, jaw still stiff. Aiden considered the words carefully. "I didn't do it for revenge," he answered. "I did it because some lessons don't stick until something is taken away." His son nodded. "And now? Now we move forward." The reopened case advanced quietly. This time, medical reports carried weight. The fracture photos, the surgeon's testimony, the timeline discrepancies. Without the shield of a rising career, Evan stood exposed. Aiden never appeared in court for the second hearing. He was teaching a class about restraint. "Control is not about dominance," he told his students. "It's about knowing exactly how much force is necessary and no more." The lesson held a different gravity now. That evening, news broke that Evan had accepted a plea that included mandatory counseling, community service, and permanent suspension from professional competition. No jail, but no ring. The punishment fit the scale. Aiden closed his phone. His son walked into the kitchen without hesitation for the first time in months. Fear had left the house, not erased, just removed, and in its place was something steadier. Across town, a man who once built his identity on violence learned how fragile it had always been. Aiden didn't celebrate. He filed the old notebook back into the drawer. He wouldn't need it again. unless someone else forgot that actions carry weight. And if that day ever came, he knew exactly how quietly he could respond. The gym felt different that winter. Not quieter, not louder, balanced. Aiden Cross stood near the edge of the mat while a group of teenagers worked through defensive drills. Hands up, chin tucked, control before aggression. He corrected posture with small adjustments, never raising his voice. His son stood among them now, not as a victim, as a student. The scar inside his mouth had faded to a thin, pale line. His speech carried only a faint stiffness when he spoke too quickly. Strength had returned to his jaw, and something steadier had returned to his eyes. The case officially closed 2 months after the plea. No prison sentence. No professional comeback. No headlines celebrating redemption. Just a quiet legal record and a career permanently suspended. Evan Riker disappeared from the fight circuit. The gym that once promoted him removed his posters. Interviews stopped requesting comments. Sponsors rewrote contracts to avoid future liability. Violence without control eventually collapses. Aiden never watched the final press statement. He didn't need confirmation. One evening, after class ended and the last student left, his son lingered on the mat. "Did you hate him?" he asked. Aiden considered the question carefully. "No," he said. "Hate clouds judgment." "Then why did you do it?" Aiden stepped closer. "Because there are lines," he replied, "and when someone crosses them, you either accept it or you redraw them." His son nodded slowly. "And now? Now you don't let what happened define you." They locked up together and stepped into the cool Oklahoma night. The air carried no tension, no waiting threat, just the quiet hum of traffic in the distance. At home, dinner felt normal again. Laughter returned in fragments, then in full. The house no longer echoed with silence. The system had corrected itself eventually, but only after pressure exposed its weakness. Aiden understood something now with clarity. Revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about correction. He had not broken a man out of rage. He had removed the illusion of invincibility. Weeks passed, then months. Life settled. One afternoon, a local reporter asked Aiden for a comment about the case during a youth self-defense event. "Any statement?" she asked, microphone hovering. Aiden looked at the group of kids practicing inside. "Yes," he said. She leaned forward. "Teach your sons discipline," he replied. "Teach your daughters strength, and teach everyone that actions carry consequences." He walked back inside before she could ask anything else. That night, he sat at the kitchen table while his son finished homework. No wires, no swelling, no fear, just the scratch of a pen and the quiet rhythm of breathing. The old part of Aiden, the one trained to disappear, to dismantle, to calculate, rested where it belonged, dormant, not gone. He didn't regret what he had done. He measured it. It had been exact. Nothing more, nothing less. And if you've been listening this far, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. It helps more than you know.